Welcome back, everyone, to this week's edition of the Cart Barn Podcast. Chris Lemley and Greg DeWalt, we're so thankful that you've decided to join us today. Greg had an interesting weekend with golf. The Waste Management in Phoenix, always one of the highlights of the West Coast. It's a great event, and I love watching the golf out there this time of year.
Yeah, I've played TPC Scottsdale, and without the ambiance, it's really kind of a blah course, in my opinion. 16 where they've got the stands. I mean, that's just kind of a nothing par three to me without the stands and the fans.
Yeah.
17, I think we saw was is a great risk reward hole. My favorite moment, one of my favorite moments was Siwoo Kim basically drove it on the green and then putted, had 70 feet, and then he putted almost into the water and then chipped up and made par. But Hideki kind of was hitting it all over the lot off the tee yesterday. Kind of was fortunate to get in the playoff, even though he needed par to win, and got him in the end. But I think it's a good one-off tournament for the tour.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed playing Wisecoff golf courses. That's kind of his signature is a drivable or a very short par four, and 17 has some character, especially that front left pin and the ball feeding off in toward the water, or in some cases into the water.
I think they've even though 18 got Hideki, he drove it in the bunker in regulation, and then he drove it in the water in the playoff. They've reduced that whole their length. I mean, they're hitting 85 yard shots into the finishing hole into the green, and to me, I'd like to see a little better, a little more challenge. Once you get it in the fairway, it's not a very tough hole.
Well, Scheffler hit a bomb on that last hole, that 72nd hole, and had a little bit of nothing in there. And yeah, I agree. And had he played any kind of decent round on Thursday, I think he walks away with that event.
Probably so. He kind of took him a while to get started, but I guess proof that you can't be great every round out there.
Yeah. Well,
Some
that's
of
true. Well,
the Birmingham, our Alabama state connections had middling results out at the Waste Management. Sepp Straka finished tied for 18th at 9 under. Bud Colley played at Alabama. He was 1 over and finished tied for 68th. And soon to be Cart Barn fan favorite Patton Kazire, he finished +4, tied for 72nd. So made a check and moves on.
yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that episode out. That'll be coming up pretty soon. Well, speaking of other state of Alabama connections, Coach Kleinard and his team went to Hawaii and kicked some royal behind out there. They won the tournament with a historic 77 under par, winning by 13 strokes, and Jackson Coyven led the Tigers. He was 25 under, and he broke a 36-hole scoring record previously held by none other than Tiger Woods.
We got to get Jackson Coyven on the show. Jackson, if you're listening, the Cart Barn needs you, wants you. I think you and to put it in perspective, that 77 under is in 54 holes, and 25 under that Jackson shot is 54 hole event. So, it's not like it was a 90 hole event or anything like that. I think you mentioned they beat Texas by 13 shots, and Texas was 64 under. Just an incredible performance, and sets them up for the rest of the spring. I think a lot of confidence.
Absolutely, and just in case you're wondering, it wasn't an extremely long golf course, but it's not pitch and putt. I think it was right at 7,000 yards. That's golfing your ball. So
yeah, I mean, it's just I can't even fathom. You and I both played college golf, and I can't fathom those numbers.
yeah, well, I couldn't. Yeah, sending me off the teal tees at RTJ that would still be a pretty challenging number. So
Good for Auburn. Congrats to Auburn on a terrific
congrats to
performance.
Auburn, War Eagle, and go Coach Kleinard. So let's get into today's episode of the Cart Barn. It's one I've been looking forward to for a long time, and our guest is Gary Williams. Many of you will remember Gary. He spent a lot of time Golf Channel hosting Morning Drive, covering major championships, interviewing just about every meaningful figure in the modern game. And this conversation was really good. We're not just talking about television or tournament golf. Gary spent time talking about his personal journey, how he found the game, and how he's navigated a long career in golf media. He shares some stories from behind the scenes at the Golf Channel, moments that didn't make the air, reflects on relationships, lessons. It's just a thoughtful conversation about golf, his career, and we have some fun with it, talking about his segment on the show he now hosts, 5 Clubs and Dogs on the Course. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So let's get into this week's episode with Gary Williams. Welcome back. We're glad you're here, and you've picked a good one today. Greg and I have a very special guest joining us in the Cart Barn. You've seen him from the early days of Morning Drive, and now you start your day with him on 5 Clubs. One of the most recognizable and trusted voices in golf media, Gary Williams, is officially in the Cart Barn today. Gary, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. When you say Cart Barn, my God, it makes me smile. A lot of good days in various barns through my life.
Yeah. Well, that just
Me as
seemed like a
well.
logical name, so we kind of went with it. But
It's a great name, because that's just it, is that when you say that, you just think about spending time with people that love golf, and whether it's early in the morning, late in the day, my God, yeah. Cart Barn. It's a great name.
thank you.
You got any good cart barn stories? Washing carts, pulling interesting
Hell
stuff
yeah.
out of the carts.
Absolutely. So when I was a kid, I was lucky, and kids normally don't realize their good fortune, and that's not a bad thing. It's the beauty of being a kid. No worries. But I did realize I was fortunate. My parents were members at Ridgewood Country Club in northern New Jersey. By the way, there is an Alabama connection to Ridgewood Country Club. Bill Adams was a longtime head professional. He was hired there in the early 80s. He was a young man at the time. And it's like, you're bringing some guy from Alabama to northern New Jersey. And Bill had a great career there. But my parents told me, look, we want you to be able to take advantage as a junior of the club, but you need to caddy. You need to get a loop in the morning, and then you'll have the privileges of practicing and playing late in the day. So I spent a lot of times in the Cart Barn there. My God, these men who I looked at, it was like they had done every tour and every war based on the stories they were telling me. And then when I got into the golf business, I washed a lot of carts. I mean, when I got into the apprentice program of the PGA of America, I was working outside services at the Governor's Club in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And then I moved over to Greensboro Country Club, and we actually had a barn. An actual barn was the maintenance facility and the cart barn. And it's still there today. The farm course at Greensboro Country Club, this big white barn. God, what a great building. And spending time out there with Chris Spence, who was the superintendent. And I was inside, and I actually had some responsibility at that time. But yeah. And then my last job in the business, I was at Seminole, and it wasn't a barn. It was that beautiful Spanish style clubhouse right there on the Atlantic Ocean. But we had a modest fleet of carts. It was a lot, the caddy yard was, God, you talk about stories. Herman, who was Lee Trevino's caddy, he didn't caddy. He would just come and hang out in the caddy yard. And Rabbit, who was Gary Player's longtime caddy. Those two guys came and hung out in the caddy yard every day and just told stories.
Oh, wow.
I mean, are you kidding? And we had a handful of carts that we kept underneath the clubhouse that were personal carts, including ones for William Clay Ford, who is the owner of the Detroit Lions. He had his own golf cart. Barry Van Gerbig, who was the club president. George Coleman, who was Ben Hogan's boy, the one who would arrange the match at Cypress Point, the oil man. So I've been in some various caddy yards in my time.
I don't know how you top any of those
awesome.
stories. That's pretty awesome.
Were your outside help guys, the cart barn guys, were they territorial? Like, don't come into my cart barn and try to show me how to wash carts and clean up stuff.
You know, it's funny you say that, because my best friend in life, I hired him to be a cart boy. Here I am, I'm 24. He's graduating from college, and he knew nothing about golf. And he was pestering. He kept calling the shop, and I'm like, God, man, I don't have anything. I don't have any, I don't have any jobs. I don't have any work. And then finally, somebody left, and this guy shows up wearing a $99 3-piece suit, and I'm like, you're kidding me? You're wearing a 3-piece suit to interview to be a cart boy? And I hired him, and he's my best friend. He's the godfather to my oldest child, and I'm the godfather to his oldest son. And that started in a cart barn.
Hopefully he's moved on from the cart barn.
He has. He owns animal health hospitals. He's done quite well for himself. That $99 suit took him a long way.
Obviously.
That's great.
That is great. So you grew up in New Jersey. What were your first memories of falling in love with the game, Gary?
So my father was in the paper industry, and my father was, he was true deep South, played baseball at the University of Florida, grew up, wound up, his family moved to Tampa, Florida. And he was a really good athlete. And so I had, on that side of my family, I had Southern roots, but the company that he worked for, their corporate headquarters was in Northern New Jersey. So we moved up there when I was 7 years old. I was born in Hickory, North Carolina. And so we still had a lot of dear friends in the state of North Carolina, including a guy who wound up, he was one of my dad's best friends. He was a longtime congressman who represented Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, not so much Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, Jamestown. His name was Howard Coble. And Howard had a home in the mountains of North Carolina in Boone. And the first time I struck a golf ball was at Boone Golf Club. I was 6 years old. It was my dad's McGregor iron with a leather grip. And I think I hit like 2 balls that were close to the center of the face. And I'm like, God, that felt really good. It was way too big, but it didn't matter. I was choked down almost to the steel. That was my first memory. And that was my first experience. And then what I found almost immediately was golf gave me my father uninterrupted, because all the other things that I did, and I played all sports, loved all of them, but those were team activities. My father didn't coach me. He coached me for 2 years. He coached older boys who were at the level where they had developed as baseball players. So I only played for him for 2 years. But golf, I found like I got him. It was me and him. And even if we were with 2 other people, it was still intimate. It was personal. And so we started making golf trips. He took me everywhere. My first trip to Ireland, my first trip to Scotland, my first round of golf at Pine Valley, Pebble Beach, were with my dad, and most places in between. So, that's why I fell in love with golf, and that's why I love it now, because, not recently, but a couple of years ago, I went to Pinehurst by myself, intentionally, and told them, I said, look, pair me with anybody. And I played the cradle. I played number 4, number 2. And I was paired with, it just so happened, I played the cradle with a father, a son, and a grandfather. I played number 2 with a father, a son, and a father and 2 sons who had come over for the weekend from Charlotte. That's how they spent time together. And then I played number 4 with a father and a son, and the son wound up going on and playing golf at Duke. And he was like 13 years old at the time. His dad had played golf at Duke. Like and I'm looking and I'm like, it was totally accidental, but it only reinforced why I loved it, because that's how we try to carve out time. Mm-hmm. And, I went on a trip 2 summers or 2 falls ago with 3 college buddies of mine from Vanderbilt for 8 days. My wife's like, you're going to go there for 8 days and you guys are going to be with each other like all day and all night. And you're going to drive around Scotland and you're like never going to be apart from each other. I'm like, yeah, like, where else in life would you do that with other people? You wouldn't.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I just did that this past summer in Scotland with 3 friends. And there was no fights, no arguments, no nothing, just a good time.
Greg, that summed up our trip. No tense moments, no friction, no arguments, no debates, laughing and talking. And we didn't just talk about golf, we talked about life, we talked about careers. These guys I'm proud of them for all their successes, professionally, but more importantly, their kids and, their devotion to their families. And we talked about that. Mm. And we make a couple trips every year. And this past summer, we went to Chicago. None of us had played any real extensive golf in the Chicagoland. And we went 5 days, 5 different golf courses, rental car.
Yeah.
Dirty clothes.
Mm-hmm. It's golf definitely has the ability, like no other sport, to bring people together that way. Golf's been good to us and obviously to you. What courses did you play over there in Scotland?
So I told these guys, and one of the things I handle, and they're cool with it, the responsibility of the itinerary. And so I told them I'd never been up to the Highlands before. I'd done most everything around East Lothian. I've been down to the Southwest coast a couple times. And I said, if we're going to go to Dornoch, I'm not doing a hit and run there. I need to see it for a couple days. So we actually stayed there. We stayed at a place, Lynx House, which is literally right next door to the clubhouse. What a fabulous little boutique-y, just warm, great little rooms, great den to gather at night and just spend time. Anyway, we played Royal Dornoch 3 days in a row. And then we went over to Skibo Castle and stayed there one night. Andrew Carnegie's old estate that was bought by an American gentleman. His name is Ellis Short, who's from Texas. And so we stayed in the castle, the Carnegie Castle, which it's interesting. When that place was built, it was big, but Andrew Carnegie added a lot of size to that. So it's an incredible. I wish we had more time there, because you could have a great game of hide and seek in the Carnegie Castle with the number of rooms. So we stayed there, played the Carnegie course at Skibo Castle, which is a beautiful setting. And then we drove down, and gets to like a 4.5 hour ride. And we're just laughing, and it was tedious. It wasn't it was only like 140 kilometers, but it took like 4 hours with going through all these little hamlets and roundabouts and all that. Who cares? And then we stayed right at Muirfield at Grey Walls and played Gullen, North Berwick, Muirfield. And then our last round, it's escaping me because we did it impromptu. It was our last afternoon. We had already played and we were leaving the next morning out of Edinburgh. We played where they had the first Solheim Cup. It's a Parkland-style golf course, and I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it. And it was fun. I mean, it was late in the day, setting sun. That too, an old converted castle into a hotel. But so that was the itinerary.
That's a good one. I think my next trip over will probably be up to the Highlands. We played around East Lothian. We played Kilspindie,
Yes.
North Berwick, Gullen 3, Dunbar. I loved it. It was for my first trip over. And then we went over to played Machrihanish and Dunaverty. It's harrowing to drive over there, though, you know?
It is. And I did the driving, and I like the challenge, but it's not as challenging as it used to be. The first time I went over there, what I tell people when they're like, God, what's it like to drive? I'm like, it's challenging. It's disorienting at the beginning for sure. And it may never get like normal because it's like, you're just think left, think left, think left, where all we do is think right. And we don't even think. It's just instinctual that we just stay right over here, stay left. Left is safety. But what I tell people is, one, you have to think that. But the first time I went over there, everything was a stick shift. And so not only are you driving on the left-hand side of the road, I'm right-handed. You're changing a stick shift with your left hand, which I'd never done that. So it's like the combination of both those things is like, okay, I like the challenge. Plus, not that my buddies they're not big drinkers, but I'm the sober guy now, so I'll drive all day, all night. Have as many pints as you want, boys. I got it. But it is, yeah. I mean, I remember the first time I went. It wasn't Scotland; it was Ireland, and we let my sister drive. And I swear, we almost got T-boned the first roundabout leaving the Shannon airport. I'm like, okay, you're out. You're out. We're going to the bench here. You have no idea what you're doing.
I only about killed us once, but we lived to tell about it. So that was, but it is, you know, when you're up in we were going from Aberfoyle down to Machrihanish, and it's like you say, it may only be 120 miles, but it's a 4-hour drive because the roads are narrow, speed limit. You can't go fast. But there's no guardrails. There's trees and stone walls and nothing to keep you on the road. But it's an interesting experience, especially for a first time.
Part of it. That's part of it. I mean, that's part of the charm of it. Like, and I think that's why we as Americans, we go over there and we're like tickled by it. Like, if I had to do that every day, I'd be like, God, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have like 5 lanes? Which is what we live with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I, you mentioned like there's so many places, all those places you mentioned, like all that does is make me want to go back and being up there. And we went over to Golspie, but we didn't play it. And I want to play, Nairn and Brora. It's just, you get up there and all these little places that don't get all the accolades, even 9-holers. And I know, Jim Hartzell, who I got a note from Jim yesterday. What great timing. And I'm going to have him on my show soon enough.
Good.
And he, as far as getting you not only educated, but telling the stories of all these places that are off the beaten track. You talk about, and obviously when Revelation comes, that book is, it's powerful, it's deep, it's challenging, but it's beautiful.
It's
he's a
beautiful.
friend of the podcast, and love talking with Jim, who will talk for hours and hours and hours. And if you ever need a guide to set up your trip, he will tell you where you need to go play, where you don't need to go play, and where to eat, where to sleep. Amazing man.
Yeah, he is. He's an amazing man, very talented writer, storyteller. His son Jordan, his book was, and my son played at the club growing up together. So, yeah, and he's got a new book coming out. I'm sure you know
Yes,
about that. So,
I do.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
note
So
that he
what?
sent me included a little note card about the new book. So I'm looking forward to having him on, talk about the new book,
yeah.
talk about when Revelation comes. And, that's the thing. I think, look, I don't try to impress upon people who are non-golfers the power of the game. But like, for instance, I had Taylor Twellman on my show, who's a soccer analyst.
That was an awesome interview, by the
Yeah,
way.
and these are his words, and I totally get it. That he said golf saved my life in terms of he dealt with a very serious head injury that ended his career and was in dark places, and similarly, look, golf doesn't keep me sober, but there are things that are essential to my daily recovery, and one of that is engagement. One of that is being immersed in you know the lives of other people, and golf, and finding that again in a way that is deep and meaningful. And our motto at Five Clubs is that it's the time, not the score. And believe me, I care about the score, but it's the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. Mm.
I wanted to revisit you mentioning your time with your dad. Do you remember the conversations with your father from the golf course or on the way and home from the golf course, and how impactful those were?
I mean, they shaped who I am. um they helped me understand, and I mean this sincerely. It helped me understand what love means. I've shared this a handful of times over since this occurred. This was in September of 1995, and we went to Scotland. It was me, my dad, and a gentleman, Jim Corrigan, who was the longtime, still is the head golf professional at the Mesquamaket Club in Watchung, Rhode Island, one of the most charming places on earth. And we were playing Muirfield one day, and we had the full Muirfield experience. Play your own ball in the morning, the big gluttonous lunch, where you just want to take a nap when it's over, but then you take your coat and tie off and you go back out there. And I remember, as if it was yesterday, we were playing alternate shot, and I'm looking back at my father on the eighth tee, and I'm out in the fairway waiting to hit his tee shot, and I see his silhouette, and behind him is the Firth of Forth, and I'm thinking, I couldn't love anybody more than I love that person who is 200 yards away from me. And like, why would I feel that? I'm a young man. I'm 26 years old, and I shared that at my rehearsal dinner at my wedding, talking about the depths that and that was through golf. But as far as the conversations, they range from, my father was not overbearing in any way. I was lucky. There was great harmony in our home. My mother was the Irish Catholic from Queens, New York. My dad's the Southern Baptist from Moultrie, Georgia. Um, but they had incredible harmony. And so, my father and mother never told us what to do. They encouraged us. And so that's what I got a lot on the golf course, was encouragement about the way I was playing, encouragement about what the next decision that I had to make. We got into some fights. I hated when he told me what to do. Like, that bunker shot, it's like, don't tell me what to do. But that's what fathers and sons do. We played in father-son golf tournaments. We played in a father-son golf tournament in Ireland. And we got paired with the last day? It was after his rookie year. He hadn't taken a snap. And the next year, he won the Super Bowl. Tom Brady and his father. And I knew who Tom was because I was covering all sports at the time and knew, his career at the University of Michigan. And I'm, guys, as God is my witness, we were walking down the sixth hole at Ballybunion, and we were out. For people who don't remember, not only was Bledsoe the guy, the Patriots had signed Damon Huard as a free agent to be his backup. And so Tom was just a guy. He was just a body. It was, hey, can he make the roster? And I'll never forget the sixth hole. I was asking him about Belichick, and he said he really likes me. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? Like, what do you mean he really likes you? And we had lunch. They played that was in the spring of 2001. They came and played the Panthers in a preseason game, and we had lunch. And he said, Gary, he wanted to start me tonight, but Bledsoe told him that would send the team the wrong message. 3 weeks later, Mo Lewis hit Drew Bledsoe, and the Tom Brady era began. And it's interesting that the whole thing about him liking me, the inevitability of him being the guy there was more than the Mo Lewis hit. So I went off on a tangent about, the things that I got from my dad, but we played in father-son tournaments together, won a few, won one at Pebble Beach, where there was 126 teams in this competition, but they had a pro division. So either the father or the son could be a golf professional. And I was an assistant at the time. We get out there, we walk into the lodge, and they're like, just go into that room for registration. We walk in, they had these big elaborate scoreboards that denoted each division. So we went over to the pro division. There was one team in the pro division, us. All we had to do was finish, and we won a giant Waterford Crystal trophy. When they handed it to us, I said, if you can guarantee the field next year, we'll be back.
That's good.
Well, obviously the Williams name forced everybody to the other division because they knew they had no chance.
Well, the funny part about that is that, I haven't, look, my last name is a very, generic name. But I'm Gary Williams. My dad was Buck Williams. So there were a lot of people, honestly, that we would show up at things, and they were excited because they thought the coach of Maryland and the former All-American power forward Buck Williams were playing in this event. And it was two 5'9" white guys showing up. Some middle-aged guy with his adolescent son. They're like, okay, this is as disappointing as it gets.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, let's kind of transition to your time at the Golf Channel. How did all that come about, and the run you had with Morning Drive, and then we'll move on to now your endeavor with 5 Clubs.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I started on the radio side doing local radio in Charlotte, and then I started doing some television. Here's just a quick little connection to the state of Alabama. The guy who put me on television was a guy named Chuck Gerber, who ran ESPN Regional, which is in Charlotte, which is now the home for the SEC network, the ACC network. ESPN has always had a big presence and has done a lot of production out of that facility. And Chuck Gerber was Mike Slive, who was the SEC commissioner, obviously, based there in Birmingham, was his kind of conciliary. He was kind of, Chuck knew everything, like everything that was going to happen in sports, specifically collegiate sports, like he was 3 steps ahead. And so anyway, Chuck Gerber put me on TV doing play-by-play for college football and basketball. And so but I always had such, a deep love for the game of golf. And so I knew the Golf Channel, this was late 2009, 2010, had the ambition to start a live morning show. So now I'm in New York City I was the first morning host on Mad Dog Radio on SiriusXM. And I was doing some TV as well for a regional sports network. And it just so happened I was going to have lunch with my agent, who worked for Sandy Montag from IMG at the time. And so I had lunch the day before with Chris Mad Dog Russo And Steve Phillips, who was the former GM of the Mets, who then, had his run at ESPN, and he was coming out of his troubling period. And they were entertaining the idea of pairing me with him to become my co-host on the morning show. And I like Steve from the moment we had this lunch. So it appeared at that moment that was going to happen. I have lunch the next day with my agent, who said, look, Golf Channel is going to launch this morning show. Are you interested in it? And I said, yes, I'm interested in it. I flew to Orlando the next week, spent the whole day there, then met with the guy who was running Golf Channel at the time, a guy named Tom Stathakis, who was the man who hired me. And I was hired along with Eric Casillas and Holly Saunders to launch Morning Drive on January 3rd of 2011. And Steve wound up coming with me. We only worked together for a couple months. So I, took it, and it wasn't a leap of faith. It was, this is Golf Channel. This is TV. This is hosting a live TV show. And here's the thing about Golf Channel, which will get us to Joe Gibbs and Arnold and Tim Neer, who founded Golf Channel. They had the temerity and the guts to go 24/7 with golf before anybody else. NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, any of them. Nobody had done it, and they did it in 1995. And in 2011, all of those sports had gone 24/7 with their own networks, but none of them had a live morning show. Golf was first again with Morning Drive. And now everybody's got a morning show. NFL Network, MLB Network, NBA, TV. They've all got it now. But they didn't have it before golf had it.
No.
Amazing.
What do you think made that show connect with golfers the way that it did?
I think, one, starting with, it gave them live conversation in the morning where they couldn't get it from any other sport. So there was like, okay, I can watch a re-air. Look, as golfers, the one thing that I've always known about golfers that is one of the reasons why I love time with people who love golf. Some people are very narrow, and golf really is like their only love, and that's great. Most golfers are curious minds. They have other interests, so they love other sports. But I think that was, we had an advantage immediately that we're giving something to them live, and it was new. So there was naturally a curiosity about that. But the other part that I think resonated with people was that, look, Golf Channel already had Golf Central.
Yeah.
That was their professional golf recap show. What we gave them was the game of golf, not the sport of just professional golf. And look, we were lucky. I'll never forget Rory McIlroy. This was in May of 2011. We had been on the air for 5 months, and we were already starting to gain traction with the best players in the world. I'll never forget not only that experience, but even before that, in March, I'm sitting there watching a press conference from the World Golf Championship, the match play, and Martin Keimer, who was the number one player in the world at the time, said, I love coming to the United States. Like, I can watch Morning Drive. And I'm like, what did he just say? Did he just say that he loves coming here because he can watch this fledgling TV show that I'm a part of? And then, I'm spending time with Rory that day. This was after he had his Sunday meltdown at the Masters. And his first start after that was at the Memorial. I caddied for him in the Pro-Am. We followed him with cameras. We spent the whole day together. And we were walking down the 18th fairway, which was our 9th hole. And he said to me, he's like, Gary, everybody watches Morning Drive. And I turned to my cameraman and I said, I hope to God you're rolling right now that you captured that he just said that. So it was a combination of players were watching, and at the time there was a lot of players still living in Orlando. There are not many more. They're all now in Jupiter. Like, guys would come in, like, they're like, yeah, I want to do that show. Bubba Watson won the Masters in 2012. And the next morning, we didn't even know he was coming. I swear to God. Nobody knew other than Mike McCarley, who had become the president of Golf Channel. He had arranged it. He walked right through the door into our studio. We didn't even know, wearing the green jacket. He had won the Masters 12 hours before. Like that was, I mean, I never lost sight of like how impactful that was to me, that people wanted to be a part of it. So it was a combination of players wanted to participate, industry leaders wanted to be heard, recreational golf was covered. We were covering the game, not just talking about pro golf, which we did a lot of. And I think all of that combined gave people a place where if you like golf, like this is a morning conversation about something I love.
Yeah, that's an interesting story about Bubba, because now you've got to go off script, right? When he comes in, you're not prepared for that.
No. And again, I did some fun stuff with him. Like again, these only amplify, the fact that they were willing participants. I did a thing, a day in the life, where it was like I was the player and he was just a nobody. And we flew from Orlando to New Orleans for the Zurich Classic. And we acted like it was my plane, not his. And we got off and like, I got the courtesy car. I had the tour bag with my name on it that also had Morning Drive on it. My bag was in the locker room. Like Bubba was, I caddied for him at the Grand Slam of Golf in Bermuda with cameras, and he's barking at me because I'm getting him bad yardages. I'm like, hey man, I'm not used to 191 yard 9 irons. Okay. So you should have hit 6.
You just turn it up, turn it over.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Joe Gibbs, we've had him on as you know, and he's what a wonderful guy. He was very generous with his time, told some really interesting stories about having wine in the driveway with Arnold at Shoal Creek, and just the immediate connection that those guys had.
Look, I've said this. I'm not saying this because you guys are Alabama based. I've said this publicly. We'll beat the drum again this year. It's a Hall of Fame year. Joe Gibbs should be in the World Golf Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And along with Tim Neer, Arnold obviously is in there. Arnold's in there for his playing career. The acknowledgement of what those men created. The game of golf is different in that it's participatory. And I do not think there are enough people who have an enormous impact on the industry of golf. And even though there is a contributor's wing, there's not enough recognition in that department. And Joe, like you said, first of all, he's an incredibly sweet man. But those 3 men and their core competencies, without those 3 guys having the specific skills that they had to, one, plug into what at the time was the driving force of what was distribution, which was through linear television and cable, and through the business and advertising and sponsorship, and then through having the ultimate, guy who could walk into a boardroom and look somebody in the eye and say, I'm not saying no to Arnold Palmer. These other guys know what they're doing on the business side of it. He is the most iconic face that the game arguably has ever known. Joe, I was lucky enough to spend a reasonable amount of time with him. He would come in. And that was the other part about it, is that when Morning Drive was created, even though on a day-to-day basis, obviously those men were removed from it, but the source of pride that they all had with what it had become, Arnold would come in. Again, I was very fortunate the last 5 years of his life to spend a lot of time with him. I'd go down to Bay Hill and have breakfast with him on Sunday mornings. Had an amazing experience flying back from the Greenbrier with him and Jack. Jack asked me if I wanted a ride home. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't a ride home in a wood-paneled station wagon. This is a ride home on Air Bear. And he said, well, Arnold's plane is being serviced, so we're going to drop him off in Orlando. and I've told this story. It's maybe, look, it will never get better. There are a lot of great things that I still get to do and love doing. I love doing what I do every day, but Arnold, Jack, Gary, and Lee together for the last time for television, which was in October of 2015. Anyway, we get on this plane, and Jack and Barbara are going to get off in Atlanta. So we had to drop down in Atlanta, and I'm sitting on the bench on this plane looking across, and Arnold and Jack are facing each other in these two chairs. And I'm like, how am I here? How am I? And look, we all knew that it was twilight for Arnold. Everybody knew that every moment with him, you didn't know if that might be the last one. It wasn't morbid. It's just what reality was, the timidity that comes with, advancing age. And, he had just turned 87. And so anyway, Jack and Barbara get off the plane, and Jack pulled Arnold in, gave him a kiss on the cheek, whispered something in his ear. They got off. They closed the door. The pilot's standing outside of the cockpit, and Arnold said to him, "What's the flight time to Orlando?" And the pilot said, 43 minutes. And Arnold turned to me and he said, "My plane would do it in 39. And I'm like, holy shit. You guys are competing until the last moment.
Oh.
And I told Jack that story after Arnold died. He loved it so much. He loved the fact that that guy wanted to beat him any way he could with just airspeed, if that was what was all that was left. So anyway, look, back to Joe. When Arnold died, and this gets to kind of one of my last great moments with him, doing something on the air, because a lot of those guys, they would come back annually on the anniversary of the birthday of Golf Channel, of which they just celebrated year 31.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe came to Orlando when Golf Channel went 24 hours commercial free after Arnold died. And that is one of the prouder, if not the proudest moment of my broadcast career, to be a very small part of that 24 hours where we just went from one conversation to the next, from Fred Couples crying on the phone to Jack Nicklaus to everybody. And Joe flew to Orlando, and I had him in the studio, and him sharing about his relationship with Arnold, sharing what it took to put Golf Channel on the air. Joe is a Hall of Famer, and I hope that he rightfully gets the call, because without him, without the three of them doing what they did with the skills that they had, look, most things are inevitable, and would Golf Channel have been inevitable? I guess, but in 1995, impossible. And they made impossible possible.
Well, well said.
It's amazing how it was the predecessor. You think now the big three sports, baseball, basketball, and football, but golf was ahead of the curve from day one with everything, and that's an amazing legacy for Joe and Arnold to leave.
It's extraordinary. If you think about it, think about what the National Football League is, if you think about, the size and scope of these other sports. But here's the thing that people lose sight of. Again, I get back to the point about golf it's a game. The professional golf's a TV show, and it's a very important subset of something that is $100 billion industry. Those guys recognize that. Now, it wasn't a $100 billion industry at the time, but they understood that golf was about instruction and travel and fitness and fashion and playing. We don't go out. I'm not going out this afternoon and running go routes in the street. I'm going to go to the in-town club because it's 22 degrees and hit shots in a simulator. But I'm not going to. Now, people will shoot baskets in their driveway, but many more people are going to go out and hit golf balls.
Well, quick story for you. just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, because that's pretty deep. But when we had Mr. Gibbs on, he's telling the story because he lives at Isleworth. I've been there, played there, and he's talking about the people, naming names about people that live around him. And Greg says, "So, what's it like having Tiger Woods living a wedge away from you?" And he said, "Well, it might be a wedge for you, but these are pretty big lots."
Isleworth, I mean, God, if the walls of that locker room could talk.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, with all due respect to Jupe Life and, these places that exist now with Bears Club and Medalist and Grove 23 and all that, Isleworth was the epicenter of it all.
Mm.
And just a couple miles away was the King. I mean, from Bay Hill, which Bay Hill was the forerunner to Isleworth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't realize that when Greg Norman chose to make America home, Bay Hill was his home. And same for Payne Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great little video vignette of Payne playing in the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He lived in a little patio home that is to the right of the 12th fairway, which is the par 5 12th hole. And there's the little video of Tracy holding up the baby and Payne kissing her through that fencing that he had between his backyard and what was the 12th hole at Bay Hill. It was Bay Hill, and then it was Isleworth. And you have the founder of Golf Channel, and you got every player was anybody, to the deity himself, Tiger, becoming what he became, and everybody else in between,
mm-hmm.
playing there every day.
Gary, I have that whole final round of Payne winning at Bay Hill on VHS tape.
Wow.
With the live coverage and him walking over there and Tracy holding
Chelsea
and giving a kiss. I've got that on VHS.
Now,
and it still works.
That's awesome. I'll tell you what I've got on VHS. Me being on CBS cameras in 1991, standing behind the 10th tee at the Masters.
Oh.
And I knew to get behind that 10th tee because they always showed tee shots on 10 because that's where the Masters began. Like, I knew where those cameras were going to be. I've got that on VHS. Now, tell me, I'm not certain. I think that check was for $108,000. I think that was the winner's check.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't 200 for sure.
No. And he donated the whole thing to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And donating a whole winner's check back then was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Absolutely. So you have this 10-year run with Morning Drive. Tell us now how you've transitioned into 5 clubs and how the name came about and everything.
So Morning Drive, sadly, ended at the end of 2020 when Golf Channel moved to Connecticut. I didn't move to Connecticut with Golf Channel. I moved back to Charlotte, where I'd started my broadcast career, where our daughters were born. And a gentleman, Steve Hall, who owns a sports marketing agency, Signature Sports Group, which owns 5 clubs. We had talked through the years, not about me being involved, about he had done a lot of work in all sports, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, the NFL, basketball, specialty events like the Kentucky Derby, Triple Crown Series. He's like, I need to find a lane into golf. And I'm like, well, one of the things that's happening is that this, and again, this is before I was even considering, becoming a part of it, was I said, the digital platform and podcasting and content creation, I mean, there are a lot of people in golf that have a platform. And I said, and they all try to carve out their niche. And again, the beauty of the game of golf is that it's not just let people who cover professional golf talk about professional golf, but there are other ways. You want to talk about design, you want to talk about travel, buddies trips, narrow it down, the specific focus, what you guys are doing, and tying it into people in the state of Alabama who love the game of golf, and people in that state who've made a difference and impacted the sport, whether it be locally or statewide or beyond. And I said, that's a lane. And so when I left, then we started thinking, well, okay, maybe I could be a part of this. And so, look, like with anybody, it's like, okay, what are we going to call it? It's like the most important decision you've ever made in your life. Like you spend like all this time, like, okay, what are we going to call it? And you guys, like I said, I love the name, Cart Barn. But one of the things that I was determined was, whatever the name is, I don't want people to be able to shorten it. I don't want it to be turned into an acronym. I don't want it. Let's figure that out, because I think that could be effective and from a branding standpoint. And so I started to narrow in on, okay, what are we? What do we want to be? And it was, okay, we want to be, okay, we have ambition to contribute in a modest way. And then I started thinking about, okay, all right, the USGA started with 5 clubs and they wanted to, give some direction. And I mean this in the most modest way. This is not about, we want to grow to be, no, it was, they didn't know what they were doing. Chicago Golf Club and Shinnecock and the Country Club in Newport and St. Andrews, those are the 5. They were the 5 clubs. So that's how the name, it was an homage to the original 5 clubs that made up the construct of the original charter of the United States Golf Association in 1894. And so if people watch 5 clubs, there's a painting over my shoulder when I'm on my single shot on camera, that you see the flags of those 5 clubs and our logos in the middle of it. And that's an enormous source of pride. And we don't have any connection to the 5 clubs. Let me make that abundantly clear. We are not monetizing anything that they then take some revenue share from us. It's just an organic thing. And I will tell you that Mike Wan is tickled by that, who is the CEO of the USGA. I know some people at those various clubs. They've been very supportive. There's no direct connection. It's merely a celebration of what it was that they were at the beginning, which was, I don't know, let's try to help. And we're not trying to help the game of golf. We're trying to be an additive in a very minuscule way. So that was the derivation and the genesis of 5 clubs.
So you don't have playing privileges at those 5 clubs?
No, I don't. I've never been to St. Andrews, and I desperately need to get there. Been very fortunate to play the other 4. They're as good a day as you will ever get, truly.
And here, I thought you just drove up and said, "I'm Gary Williams, let me in."
No, because they would hope that it would be the former coach of the University of Maryland. He still has his weight of him using the name is far greater than mine will ever be.
Well, Gary, thanks for sharing the genesis of 5 clubs and where you're coming from. I can tell you from my perspective, the show, well, it feels more like a gathering than a show to me. And I have to think that was intentional.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
That means a lot. I mean, that's at its core, that's what our ambition is and was from the beginning. That is a way for people. I was forced early on to listen to people who knew far more about programming than me and about research and demographics. And they would, impress upon me, most importantly, that in the mornings, people don't haphazardly get up and, look, if you're retired and you have that luxury, God love you. You've plowed the field, you've earned it. But people have routines in the morning. And one of the things that we try to do every day is give people a conversation to where they feel like, if they're in the car listening, and we are the only show that's ever been simulcast on Golf Channel and SiriusXM, that it's not a shouting match. It's not a hot take factory, that it's a conversation about the game. It is not a professional recap show. It gets back to kind of what Morning Drive intended to be at the beginning. It was a golf conversation. And so I'm lucky that people are lending their time, whether it's players who come on or contributors that we have, some who are paid, some who are not. And so we want to feel like over time, people feel like whatever it is that I care most about in the game of golf, God, they talk about that. Now, we can't talk about it every day, but whether it's talking about what's going on with National Links Trust and whether, they're going to resolve that in an amicable way, or whether it's talking about instruction or design, or people who chase the game in various ways, like yourself, you're chasing the game. We've devoted a whole week to game chasers, people who cover the sport at the professional level, people who tell stories and, go on buddies trips. That's what we want 5 clubs to be in the morning. And, I'm not saying we've achieved that goal. You never get there. You keep trying to pursue there. And that's what we're trying to do anyway.
Well, I think you are achieving that. There's a segment, switch gears just a little bit. There's a fun segment that you do quite often. The dogs on the course. Love that. I've got a story to share with you, and then I'd love to kind of dig into how all that kind of came to be. But so I was telling Greg back in the summer, I'm in my truck. I'm heading to play golf. I can't remember. I might have been meeting him somewhere, but I'm heading to play golf. I'm listening to 5 clubs on SiriusXM in my truck, and the dog segment comes up, and you share a story. You've got my buddy from Morristown, New Jersey, with his dog Rufus, is one of the dogs that you highlighted that day. So you go to break. I hit the speed dial. I call Mike. I'm like, hey, you were just on 5 clubs. He's like, what? And so I share the story. He's able to catch the recap. It's just kind of an interesting story. I thought you might appreciate. But
I love it. And so first of all, I'm a dog lover. I have 2 dogs. Really, the reason why I wanted to do that was, and this gets back to traveling, whether it be to Scotland or Ireland or England, dogs are they've carved out a hell of a space for themselves over there. I mean, it's just, and I love it. They've earned it. They deserve it. And so my first experience playing the old course, the gentleman we were with, his name was Dave Anderson. He was an RNA member. He had a couple of champion black labs, and one of them he brought with him to play the old course every time he played it. And I was dumbstruck by not only having a dog with us playing the old course for the first time, but that this dog was so obedient and would sit on each tee, and then we would hit our tee shots. And if any tee shot was astray, which that was bound to be at least one of them, that dog would go and find that golf ball, whether it was in gorse, he'd find it. And then he would sit there until you got close, and then he'd run off. And if there was another one, he would go find that one. And I'm like, this is like taking golf to a different level. And then another gentleman who was a friend of my dad's, who was a Muirfield member and his name was John Krabby, same thing. I'm like, okay, this is how golf should be played, with a dog. And then the last experience before we launched 5 clubs on Golf Channel, I played Sunningdale for the first time. And first of all, Sunningdale may be the most delightful place on earth for golf. The old and the new, Harry Colt. I mean, this is golf at the clubhouse is a museum. Every group had a different breed dog. They were all the best looking dogs you'd ever seen. they made the whole day. They took it to a level I never thought a round of golf could be. And I'm like, all right, I'm curious about how many dogs in America have a connection to the game of golf. We're doing dogs of the week. And we started getting pictures and videos. And now we have an inventory of dogs that we could be on the air for 30 years. We'll never run out of dogs.
I have no doubt. But I enjoy
Every
the
good
segment. I think it's
super-
fun. Something different.
Every good super has a dog.
Bingo.
And if they
That's
don't,
why we'll never run
of course,
dry.
maybe sketchy.
We're never going to run dry.
Yeah.
If a super doesn't have a border collie or something close to it, I doubt their abilities with agronomics. If you don't have a dog, I don't know if you're qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy how a little simplistic idea like that just takes off.
Yeah, and again, I some stuff works, some stuff, but that is the other part of it. Is it's so funny how people who you would, and it's not, and again, it's not about them. It's about this creature that they love unconditionally. That like Brooks and Jenna Kepka were sending me. They're like, "Can we put our dog on?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's playing at the Dunhill Links in Scotland, and Jenna's like, "Has it aired yet? Can you send me the link?" Like, okay, your husband's a 5-time major winner, and you are so wrapped up in seeing your dog being featured on Dogs of the Week.
They got moved to the front of the line, right? When it came
Oh yeah,
to
absolutely. They cut the line. We would have seen their dog sometime in 2028 if we kept it in order.
What's the future for Gary Williams and 5 Clubs hold?
Yeah, so I tell you, the immediate future, we are launching a second show that's going to be co-branded with Keith Stewart from Read the Line, who is, and that, look, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and there's far more of that department than the former. And so I've tried to understand the wagering side, and I'm not a wagering person, but understanding who's good at it while remaining informational. It's about information. It's not about you should do this. You bet on that guy. It's about information. And so we are launching a new show that will be on Golf Channel called The Wager. And it'll be Wednesday nights. And some weeks when they have live from majors and from signature events, it'll just be it'll be a digital distribution. But that show, the maiden voyage, will be February 13th. So that's our next vehicle under the 5 Clubs umbrella. Keith is a former club professional, and he now contributes to Golf Digest. He contributes at TGL. He's the only accredited person from the wagering space at the Masters. So he's very well respected. He works with the PGA of America around the PGA Championship. So it's about giving people information. So I will simply just be teeing him up, leaning on not only his expertise, but he talks to players. He talks to the setup people at the PGA Tour, the LPGA. He talks to the superintendent about the agronomics of the setups. So that show is our next venture, The Wager. And then beyond that, we've got a couple other shows in development that one I'll be a part of. One will be for a couple other people who are going to become contributors for us, or they're going to have their own show, not necessarily starting on Golf Channel. The Golf Channel thing's great. We're proud of that we're having another show that's going to launch, but that's kind of the next step for us. And then lastly, we've got our first event we've ever done. that we're doing with the folks at Landman in Homer, Nebraska, this coming August, which seems like a long way off, but it'll be here before we know it. So it's called The Heartbeat. We're going to do the show from there, and it's 52 teams, a team representing every state in America, playing a 3-day competition in Homer, Nebraska.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I played there in 24 and got shut out of tee times this year.
Well, they sell out their tee sheet in less than an hour on New Year's Eve for the year.
And what I appreciated when I played there is, they don't stack tee times 8 minutes apart. I think they're 15 minutes, and so you don't have the crowded course, and that limits the number of rounds, obviously. So that's why it sells out. But I was disappointed that I didn't get on the tee sheet this year. But there's always next year. But fantastic golf course.
It's an amazing achievement by itself that they figured out a way to use that land, because the land has too much tilt to ever harvest anything on. And I give enormous credit to Will Anderson and his family who own the land. And, obviously to Rob and Tad and everybody from King Collins who designed the golf course. They kept saying, they were looking at another site, and the story is they kept saying, when are you going to take us up top? We want to see up top. Now, let me tell you what up top is. It's way up top. And when you're at the high point at Landman, you can see Sioux City, Iowa. That ain't down the street.
That's yep. It's a neat drive in too on the gravel road. You don't really know where you're going if you're headed in the right direction.
Don't wash your car before you go to Landman.
No.
Speaking of King Collins, have you played Sweetens?
I have. One of the great things ever in golf. It is that you talk about, you said it in such a kind, complimentary way about, what we are, like a conversation in the morning. That's what Sweetens Cove is. I mean, you could be looking at somebody and go, that guy's worth X, and it's like a lot of zeros. And then the group behind him is guys who work an hourly wage. That is, we talk about the heartbeat. Sweetens Cove that's where golf comes together. And it's like, you want to play 4, you want to play 8, you want to play through us. You're only going to play 36. We're going to play 136 because we all have a day pass. And let me tell you something. They nailed it.
And it's only going to get better with the short course they're developing. And ran into Rob, I think, at the show, and he said that they're going to get started on it this spring, and hopefully early next year it should be ready.
They're awesome. Rob's going to play in the heartbeat. I don't know what state he's representing. I mean, he's got work in a bunch of them.
Yeah, he's busy.
Yeah, they're awesome. Hell, that little shed. The fact that little shed produces in excess of $2 million in revenue from gear and trinkets and swag and buttons and stickers. They're brilliant.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it outsells this little pro shop now.
About the same size shop.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Pine Valley gets their bang for their buck, though.
Yeah. Hey, we could literally sit here and talk with you about golf and stories all day, but I know you've got things to do, and we appreciate it. Maybe we can schedule a 5 clubs cart barn match at Sweetens someday soon.
Let's do it. What a perfect place to meet.
Yeah, that would be great.
I think, and before we go, I think a lot of entities now are going to places. Golfers Journal schedules a bunch of events across the country. No laying up the Friday. And I think that's great because it's getting access to people who normally wouldn't be able to play the places they're going.
I admire, I'm inspired by all those guys. I've talked to all of them about, their models, about how they're building out their schedules. We'll never have something as robust as what all those guys are doing. But that's the point. Like this community of golfers, many of them are getting to experience all these amazing places together. And many of them don't know each other before they get there. And then they leave. And now I got this guy I met, from Seattle. And I got a guy from, Salem, Mass. I mean, that's awesome.
It is. That's a good place to kind of leave this conversation. We appreciate you so much, Gary.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. Appreciate being in the cart barn. It's like old times. Yeah. And I didn't get told, get out. You don't know what you're talking about. Go back to the shop.
Come
help
us clean out the carts. We would love to get you back on to continue some more deep conversations about golf.
For sure.
Gary, thanks again. Gary. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. We want to thank Gary Williams for joining us this week on the Cart Barn. That was truly a special conversation, and it's just great to be able to interview people with Gary's perspective on the game and on life, and what it means to us folks who play and love the game. Gary's perspective on the game, the media, navigating the different seasons of life is exactly why we love doing this show. Golf intersects with who we are and where we are in life, and Gary's story reflects that in a real way. So again, thanks, Gary, for taking an hour of your time to join us on the Cart Barn. And y'all who are our listeners, our core, why we're doing this, we thank you for tuning in every week for episodes. Go like, subscribe, and again, we appreciate y'all listening to us every week. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week on another edition of the Cart Barn Podcast.